Yay. Hello, everyone. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. Just smoking some smokable herbs from our wonderful guest. Look familiar? Hi, everybody. Before we get started, hello, and this is the Valerie piece from my bud vase. I could take the festive things. I'm just going to take a hit real quick, guys, because I need to always calm down before this. It's Monday. I'm actually kind of taking a little bit of a tolerance break for like the first 7 hours of today. It's a lie. I just haven't I haven't used, well, no, I actually lied. I tried not to use cannabis this morning and I totally used a vape pen. Oh well, tomorrow's another day. But smokable herbs are actually a great way to take a tolerance break. This was the first company that I learned about smokable herbs from, other than my one friend who was a vendor and sold smokable herbs as well. And when I went to White Label Party, I believe it was in Soho, I met a woman who was, explaining like the smokable herbs and everything. And I'm not too sure who it was because it just was like such a blur. I was having such a great time. But let me take one more hit. And we'll get ready to chat with Meryl Montgomery. She's the CEO of Bouquets. Excuse me, Bouquets. I said it wrong. You have to keep it festive, guys. That actually really helped calm me down a bit, so that was nice. Get camera ready. Thanks to our sponsors at Daily Dose CBD. They're a local New Jersey company. Thank you, Kelsey and Connor. All right. So I know a lot of people are in here today. This is great. I'm excited. We're going to talk about smokable herbs. You'll learn about aphrodisiacs as well. If you don't know what an aphrodisiac is, I'll explain it to you too. All right. Here we go. Let's add you in. Should be a fun chat. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Meryl. How are you?
Good. Jade. It was me. It was me at the White Label event.
I was thinking, and I'm like, oh my God, was it her? Because I didn't want to look, and then I was going to ask somebody. I don't remember
Yeah.
correctly.
That event was a lot of fun, and it was a really big blur. So I can't blame you. It was a lot of people, and there was a lot of CBD at that event.
Yes, that was like magical. Like I just remember it was really like a Willy Wonka experience for me when I walked. Like went up like the creepy elevator, and then you're like in this wonderland of like all these CBD things. And then I remember uh, you folks had the table, and I'm just like smokable herbs. What
Mhm.
is this with hemp flower? Um, so if you could actually just tell a bit about how you started your company, that would be great. So people can kind of get an idea about what you
Yeah,
actually.
sure. Well, I guess it starts long ago, 10 plus years ago. My co-founder and I actually went to college together. We were at Oregon State. And at that time, she started mixing together these botanicals with weed as really a way to moderate her dose, but also she found that depending on what herbs she used, it really changed the effect of her high. So that's really where it started. And then over, the decade, we built our careers in marketing and advertising. And we were catching up over drinks one day in 2016, and she told me about Barberry, this brand concept that she was, starting to work on, and the herbal spliff, which is weed mixed with herbals in a pre-rolled form. And I was like, dude, That sounds cool. Like when you do that, let me know, and I'd love to help out with the marketing and kind of put it aside. And then it was just one of those things. It like stuck itself in my brain, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for like 3 weeks. So I called her up and I let her know. I was like, I'd love this idea and this product. Like, if you allow me, I'd love to come on and help see what I can do. And so that was 2016. And then in 2018, we launched our herbal blends. I've got them here. I felt very proud of my little makeshift like I'm in an Airbnb right now. And I was like, this is a rug on the floor. And I was like, I think this is going to be really cute. And so yeah, we launched these in 2018, and then 2019 we came out with the CBD pre-rolls, and then 2020 we came out with the THC pre-rolls in Massachusetts and in Oregon.
Oh, cool. That was, yeah, I was going to ask you about, because I saw you had the two different pages, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they had to separate their products, because I noticed that you did have some of the THC products. And so those are just, which products of yours are THC only?
Yeah, so our Muse one, which is peppermint, sage, jasmine, and raspberry leaf. So this one we've mixed with about 5% of THC. So each pre-roll is individually dosed. So you can smoke the entire pre-roll and not have to worry about getting too stoned. Or you can smoke both pre-rolls and have a great time.
That was awesome. I remember I smoked, because at the time I believe you only had two blends, number one and number two.
I know. That was back in 2018. We rebranded since then and gave them a little bit more descriptive names. And then we also launched Car Sex, which has lion's tail, raspberry leaf, mullein, and white sage in it. So that one's very fun, uplifting. Lion's tail it's also known as wild daga. It's common. It originates in South Africa, and daga is another word for cannabis. And so it has very similar properties as cannabis. It's super uplifting, giggly, kind of euphoric. That's why it's our party blend.
Yeah, I was interested. I was like, ooh, what is I mean, I know what car sex is, but like what is the car sex blend? And I'm glad that you actually have like an assortment, because with herbal blends, it's like it's not one size fits all. And especially if you are going to be mixing it with cannabis, it can definitely like alter the effect.
Totally. Yeah.
One of the first herb that I learned about actually from you was you spoke about Blue Lotus. And when I first heard about Blue Lotus, I was like, what? I mean, it looks beautiful, but I'm like, what? Like, what is this? Like, how did you decide to incorporate Blue Lotus into your products?
Yeah. So Valerie, she is our she's the founder, she's head of product development, and she does all of the sort of recipe formulation. And when we were developing these blends and when she was really kind of figuring out the recipe, we did want very effect-based end results. So one that's for relaxing and quieting the mind, one that's good for like productivity and clearing the mind, and then our play one. And so Blue Lotus has a really long history. It's thousands of years old. It is referenced several times in the Book of the Dead. Like, it goes way back. And even ancient Egyptians used to make this wine out of it and use it in their like sexual ceremonies and these sort of mass Egyptian orgies. They would get stoned on this Blue Lotus wine. And it does have some of those natural aphrodisiac properties. For smoking it, you need a lot to use, I think, more than we really provide. What you feel in ours is much more of that relaxing effect. But when you can make it brew it into a wine or a tea and sort of experience some of those similar effects.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's one thing I actually make is Blue Lotus wine. That's one of my.
Yes.
So you created the.
I know. Well, there's that song, Walk Like an Egyptian, and I think they got it wrong. I think it's Fuck Like an Egyptian is really what it should be.
Because it's when you mix Blue Lotus in with any type of alcohol, like liquor, specifically, like you said, wine, that it has a similar chemical compound to MDMA.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for people with like restless leg syndrome, anything like that, that's why aphrodisiacs actually work, is because it's just really increasing that circulation. It's making, that because the circulation has increased now, it's like the sensory thing. And
Yes.
I remember I had Blue Lotus, I smoked it, and I made a tincture, and I danced until I had rug burn on my feet. Like,
Nice.
so it's like that's why it's like I know that that's a one really, really good one that I
Yeah.
always recommend to people. But it's interesting. I believe you also like not only can you smoke your products, but can't you make them into a tea, or could
Yeah.
you something like
Yeah, so they're all food grade herbs. They're made with organic herbs as well, and so they're tea herbs, and so traditionally you can brew them as tea, or you can smoke them. Smoking is what people sort of get surprised by. They're like, "Oh, I can smoke this?" I'm like, "Yeah, just like weed, it's a plant, and if it's cared for and treated properly, and you've done your research, which we have, then you're able to really find other ways of intaking that." And so, yeah, the tea benefit is a wonderful one. You can also add them into a little satchel or sprinkle them into a bath, and similarly, it sort of releases some of the oils and properties within the herbs as well. So just like a bath bomb has, pressed flowers in them, sometimes it has a very similar effect.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Like, because I think that people sometimes get hung up on smokable herbs, thinking, well, I only can smoke this, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, like this is a multi-purpose item. Like this
Yeah,
is, medicinal in a sense.
totally.
No different
It's
than
it's
caffeine.
the first medicinal. I mean, like when we think of herbs and botanicals, like these are our ancestors' first forms of medicines and remedies, whether it's for religious ceremony, recreational, or medicinal. This is where the root of modern day pharmacy comes from, is botanicals. And so if we're wanting to kind of get, that's one thing that I really love about it is I've been really exploring, finding ways to connect with my ancestors. And this is one way that kind of pulls me back and allows that same connection that has been around for truly thousands of years.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the original, like Ayurveda is the original medicine, and they say that
Yeah.
the path of the original medicine is of no resistance. Like we
Mm-hmm.
let the world continue on, and then it always finds its way back to the source. And this really is the source, and that's why I appreciate the fact that there are companies that are doing this and that are also in the cannabis space, because
Mm-hmm.
it can be often one note, um, and that people can actually see that these medicinal properties, and the fact that, not to just worship cannabis, but to see that as a complementary
Absolutely. Oh, I love how you said that. Yeah, absolutely.
medicine to
Well, and it's like, it's like when you're cooking. I think I said this last week on another interview, but it's like when you are cooking, you aren't just cooking with one ingredient. And it's very similar to when you're creating a high for yourself, whatever moment or thing you're wanting to use cannabis for in that moment, whether it's studying or working or sleeping or having sex, it has a purpose. And so there's other ingredients that you can add to bring out those effects. That's not just weed. It's like if you were to add a lime zest to a cocktail or something, right? It brings out these different notes.
Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. Now, you mentioned this having sex thing, and and I was curious because I did talk to a few people that were like, okay, well, if we're trying to, I have a lot of patients I'm helping that are trying to cut down on cannabis, but they find that it's what has been helping them,
Yeah.
have sex, but then also a lot of the individuals I help are women. And so they don't necessarily want to smoke as much cannabis if they're trying to, have a child, per
Yeah.
se. So what of your blends would would be like the sex
Yeah.
blend?
Yeah, I mean it's such a personal thing. And I think when you're cutting back on cannabis or cutting it out altogether, um, The psychoactive element is hard to replicate, I would say, with certain herbs. I mean, that THC, that's a real great cannabinoid. So that one is a tough one to really fully replace. But really, what it comes down to is the terpenes and finding those terpenes that work with whatever your personal need is. So whether it's relaxing or, mentally relaxing or physically relaxing, or if you're wanting to increase your energy and your libido, then there are different botanicals that really touch on each of those things. And those botanicals are all tied to the terpenes, just like with weed. So that's why pairing the botanicals with the weed is so great, because you're able to slowly phase cannabis out if that's your desired goal, or just to use less of it. But match it to whatever effect you're using. So like linalool, for example, is an extremely relaxing and calming one. That's a common terpene found in cannabis, but it's also the primary terpene in lavender. And so lavender oils are commonly used for massage oils, fragrances, scents, because of that relaxing effect. So there's a whole bunch of different herbs. I would say lavender, blue lotus, and rose are very traditional aphrodisiac type of herbs. They come in for different reasons, primarily because of those terpenes, but also just historically and symbolically. Like a rose, for example, is a very romantic flower. You see them a lot this time of year, sort of because of that feminine imagery that it has, but also, yeah, because of its terpenes. It has an anti-inflammatory effect and an antibacterial effect. And those can often be very helpful, specifically for women when it comes to their sort of sexual health. So that would be airplane mode. We've got all three of those in the airplane mode. That's the one with the blue lotus that you were smoking earlier. So it's got rose, lavender, blue lotus, sage, and raspberry leaf. And yeah, I would say this is the one that I've been smoking the most of. I'm actually in Mexico currently, and so I was not sure how to get my hands on weed, and then I met up with a friend who hooked me up with a few nugs. So I'm making it last. I'm making it last by mixing it with my airplane mode one here.
Nice. That's awesome. And now, if people were going to mix, like how you're mixing it with cannabis, do you have like a specific ratio that you recommend for the herbs to the cannabis itself?
Again, yeah, it comes down to really what your personal threshold is. We're all about exploring weed and finding those levels that work for you. And so the benefit of mixing it with botanicals is that you're able to enjoy smoking, and smoking has a pretty quick activation time. Usually immediately to 5 minutes is when you'll start to feel the full effects of your high. And so when you're able to dilute that down, you don't have to worry about smoking too much and getting too stoned. So it does come down to your personal preference. I am about a 50-50, maybe slightly more botanicals than I am weed right now because I'm conserving. But I mean, again, it really does come down to sort of what your effects are and what your own levels are. And tolerance. I mean, you mentioned a smoke tolerance break this morning.
Yeah.
I took I didn't smoke for all of January. And I was actually surprised. My first time I smoked, my tolerance, I think it was like I was smoking again for the first time, like in high school, where I was like, I think I'm not high. Like I think I need, like, I was out smoking my friend and she smokes every day. And I'm like, something is going on here.
I love that. Like, I have to say, that's why it's like I missed that level of euphoria. Like, the herbs bring in a nice, like, yeah, it's definitely not like, I don't want to misinform anybody. It is not like replacing cannabis. Like, you're not getting more in. It's a totally different sensation and it's welcomed.
Yeah.
But I really do miss that euphoria from cannabis. And it's just like, you really do need these tolerance breaks. You really.
Yeah, that euphoria. I mean, this is the wild dogga. Is that one I was mentioning earlier. It's that bright orange flower. So it looks like a little lion's tail. That's why it's called that. But yeah, that one is very good for euphoric sort of feelings, and I would definitely recommend that one if your clients and patients are looking for something that's a little bit more uplifting and energizing. That's a great one too. Peppermint and jasmine are also really good they're also aphrodisiac botanicals, but they have great effects. I mean, peppermint is an awakening one, right? So it can help bring up some sort of sensitive tingles and things like that. So that's a good one for uplifting feelings as well. Jasmine also, it has a very sort of neutral scent, but it is good for, say, strengthening sexual strength and libido, and really sort of improving sexual stimulants. So jasmine is also a great one too when you're looking for more of those uplifting kind of sensations.
I mean, that makes sense. I have, I drink a lot of tea, and
Yeah.
I blend a lot of herbs into my tea, and jasmine and rose and peppermint are
Yep.
those are my top, like sometimes I just have to have it. So
Yeah.
it's really great. And especially, just to touch back on the fact you were talking about rose before, I don't know if anybody came in here from the TikTok video that blew up for, I don't even know why, about
That's a weird.
smoking roses.
Who knows?
But it really is great for like menstruation and things like that. Like when you're having, just it helps even out hormones
Yeah.
for real. Like that's why I
Yeah.
have it so often. And I really like, that's one of the ones that I recommend to people, especially if you're a taste kind of person. Like I
Mhm.
find that has a nice taste to it when you're
Yeah.
consuming it as well. And also peppermint, bring it back to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, it does come down to your own body. I mean, your nose knows. So like when you smell something or taste something or feel something and you have an immediate positive reaction to that,
Mm.
that is something that's a sign. That's your body telling you that it wants that.
Yeah.
So to lean into that, it's all about self-exploration and really kind of finding what works for you. And that can be really fun, especially if it's with the right partner or partners.
Yeah. What is yours? Do you have a favorite herb that you like, your go-to herb or blend, I should say?
Yeah, yeah, like I was saying, right now it's the airplane mode. It is because I've been smoking a lot more at night. When I was in Portland, I was pretty much a regular daily, multiple times a day smoker. But I'm currently in Mexico City, and so I've had to adjust my consumption habits because of that. And so now I only smoke at nighttime. And so this is the good one that is good for nighttime, chilling out. And yeah, it's pretty nice.
Oh, awesome. How do you source your herbs, actually? I was curious about that.
We source them from all over the world, and we have multiple sort of backup sources. COVID really reinforced our need for secondary and third sources when those supply chains break. And so, yeah, we source them from all over the world. We specifically look for organic farmers, and if they aren't able to provide an organic certification, which oftentimes small farms just can't do that, it's really expensive to get that. We look into their growing practices and sort of their own practices as well within the company. And then when we receive the herbs, we send them through a pretty scrutinous test. We test them for pesticides, molds, microbiomes, just to make sure that it is essentially could get its organic stamp, even though it's maybe not fully certified organic. So yeah, we have right now quite a few supply partners that range from being pretty large industrial farms all the way down to smaller sort of mom and pop farms.
Yeah, and I will second that. That is very important, especially when you're getting rarer herbs,
Oh
that
yeah.
it's coming from, a clean, and ethical place as well. Because my friend who she makes teas, I just remember her struggle getting stuff, or stuff would like arrive and it's like, what is this? Or
Yeah.
blue,
Yeah. Very
yeah, dyed.
Very questionable. We also, whenever we get, once we find the right supply partner and we start ordering in bulk, we also hand process all of our herbs. So they go through a pretty physical round of inspection where we're looking at each petal and making sure that everything is clean and kosher. And so yeah, I mean, it's a very manual process, but it is one of those things. I think, when you're either mixing your own herbs, and yes, that's great, but when you go to an already existing herbal blend, it likely has gone through several rounds of testing and manicuring and making sure that it's sort of herb and ready for you.
Yeah. And that's something I really want to stress to people. It's like you don't have to be afraid of trying these new things. You don't have to be afraid of smokable herbs. I know there was a bit of miscommunication when I posted the rose video, that people were actually going out and buying bouquets and like
Right.
drawing their own things. Or that even happened with the rose. I'll even go back. Rose petal blunts. Like that
Yeah.
was a big no-no that a lot of people seem to have missed. Like they don't understand that like these commercially grown things
Yeah.
are laden with pesticides. And
What?
yeah, like even if it's not just the source in which it's coming from,
Yeah.
contains so much chemicals. Like, but when you're going to a handcrafted, somebody that can vet for it, especially when it's a small business,
Yeah.
that that's what I think is like cream of the crop. That's how you know you got something good. Plus, it's infused
Yeah.
with positive vibes.
Yeah, with love, real love. And I mean, I would stress too, it's the leafier or the more petal the flower has, um, that usually needs the most care. So whether or not, like from a growing perspective, they're the most delicate, they're typically the more expensive, and that's because of all of the sort of treatment and care that's needed to get that flower sort of fully preserved. And roses too have a pretty, I mean, they're a very old flower, but they're very commercialized. So roses have been genetically altered to be more fragrant or to be more colorful or to be whatever that strain is. And so, yeah, the roses that you give as a gift should not be consumed in any way other than visually consumed with your eyes.
Like even be careful of the ones in your yard, because this is
Mm-hmm.
they're coming from these nurseries. They
Yeah.
are like it's commercial. So just really, if you're getting interested in herbs, stick to a company. Don't just like go out and forage like
Yeah.
and assume like
Yeah.
really do not advise that.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so we were talking about smoking these herbs. Now, I might butcher the name, but Omura is your
Yeah.
correct
Amara.
word for that?
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
just curious, like, what is this? What is
Yeah,
it?
Omara is really cool. So, okay, so I guess to take it even further back, we went through this accelerator program in 2019. And you remember 2019, take it back. Vapes were the shit. Like vape, everything was like vape, 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 vape. And I don't love vapes except when I'm traveling. And we weren't really sure. It was a lot of like mysterious stuff of like what is in a vape, and then Vape Gate happened, and we were all like, you see, like, you see, no one knows what's in this shit. And so we were getting a lot of pressure and opinions to explore this vape world. And Valerie and I really stayed firm in our vision for maintaining these smoking herbs in our herbal spliff line. And then Omura approached us and, presented us this idea that it was a way of experiencing a similar vape-like effect, which is essentially non-combustion. You're taking it out of the, actual lighting it and burning sensation, but they actually have their device. What it does is it heats it to a certain degree to release the vapors of the botanicals. So you're able to get a smoke sensation, but without actually combusting. And that was really eye-opening for us, because then we were able to sort of step out of the combustion zone, which is what that whole vape trend is really about, and that vape market is growing, is out of the combustion zone. But it felt like smoking, which is what we love. Like, we love smoking, not just from the smoke perspective, but from the ritual perspective of it too. It's really grounding. And then even the oral sensation of it. There's something about having that paper to mouth sort of feeling with the smoke that really just pulls it all together. So Omura was really a match made in heaven for us. We were able to bring our airplane mode one, which is the one with the blue lotus and rose and lavender. We're able to bring that into this non-combustion product line. So it's been really fun watching that grow and explode, and we're looking to bring on our other flavors eventually as well into that.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, like you really should go check it out, because I looked at it and I'm like, the future is now. Like,
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, and they're a great partner to work with too. Yeah, it's partnerships are an important thing for us, and they have a lot of the boxes that we like to check in terms of environmental sort of parameters that we like to stay within. So yeah, it's been a fun one.
yeah, and when you're using, I'm like asking about it because you obviously know how to use it, but since it's not combustion, when you're putting in the pre-roll, it's not like the paper, everything like that. It's basically staying.
Yeah, so we had to create they're called the flower sticks, and so it's not our exact pre-rolls. It's our herbal blends mixed with Suver Haze, which is the hemp partner we use down in Bend, Oregon. It's a women-owned farm. It's really great flour, and so we mix those together and put them into the flower sticks, which are custom fit for the Omura device.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. So that makes sense. That makes sense now. But I am like super, super interested in that because to still have it, and like you said, you're absolutely right. Like that whole ritual of actually inhaling it and smoking it, and it, still feeling like you're having this sesh.
Mm-hmm.
I've used other vapes before where you lose that whole.
I don't know what it is about vapes. Like I said, I think that they worked when I was living and working in New York. They were great for like happy hours or like bathroom smoke sessions or like like whatever like needed to happen. And like I said, even now if I'm traveling, it's an easy thing. But it's like I can never get high from them. I could never really get high from them, and or I would just get like super red-eyed and kind of heady high, and not the full experience. But I mean, smoking is the most bioavailable form of consumption. It has the quickest onset time, and I just think it's still queen. Like flour is still the best-selling product in the market, and pre-rolls specifically are a great. They're one of the fastest or one of the largest market segments as well. So people love to smoke, even even like as vapes grow, people will always and still do love to smoke. And I think the industry is now at a point where a few years ago people were like, oh, we'll see the pre-roll market's going to go down or the flower market's going to go down, and it really hasn't. It really hasn't.
Like even as I got into being more like health conscious about things, and like I own several vapes. I really,
Mm-hmm.
really tried. It's like finding a diet that works for you. It's just like
Yeah.
it wasn't happening, and I'm like, I really love combustion. Combustion does a whole slew of other things. It's just this unregulated temperature, and you're just
Yeah.
going for it,
Yeah.
And I'm a pre-roll gal. People give me shit for it, but listen, I'm a businesswoman.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes,
a go.
you get it. You get it. It's efficient. I was telling a friend, I'm like not really into working out anymore, but there was a time, like I do yoga now, but there was a time when I was like big into stairs. And like even now, if I'm doing cardio, it's stairs because I'm like, that's the most workout I can get in the least amount of time. Like this is just how it has to be. Totally.
Like, oh my God. Yeah, you don't know how much shit I get about pre-rolls, but that's awesome that it's also that we also now
I
spoke.
think that says something. I mean, I think it says, I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize. I think the fact that I don't know who's giving you this shit, but it is interesting that there is still this stigma around it when I think that there really could, I mean, that's what we're all about is we're bringing forth an alternative, a way that people can enjoy smoking, but really be curated and specific and conscious about how they're smoking and what they're smoking. I mean, it's when you're looking at like the health impacts of combustion or even just of all the weed, like sure, combustion is one element of the thing that you're consuming, but it also comes down to the flower, who's the flower source, what are the soil like it really is so many layers that can be added to or thought about or really optimized when you're looking at sort of the health impacts of what you're consuming and combusting at the end of the day.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to cannabis, because their roots like, it's taking in all of the chemicals. So if you're already from the get-go going to have this, you're bragging that you're having this full flower, medicine, and that it's not in a pre-roll, it doesn't matter if it came from chemical laden soil. It's now like it
Yeah.
it's decreased in its medicinal properties. Like, I'd rather smoke something that, was safely, like, okay, maybe it is shake, but maybe it came from a clean, ethical place
Yeah.
that I know is safe. And that's really everything I preach about, is about safe access, safe,
Yeah.
clean medicine. Like, seriously, I have seen it all. I've had friends who have friends that passed away, like when Vapegate was happening, passed
Mhm.
away from these like really shitty cartridges. Like, people really didn't care. They'd be like, well, it was $15. I'm like, ew. Like, there's
I
more
mean,
cannabis than that.
yes. Well, and it's about, processing and sort of having that transparency in the processing process. And yeah, I mean, that's why I think smoking too is so great, especially if you are figuring out that dose, because it has the quickest onset time. You're able to really quickly check in with yourself and be like, okay, how do I feel now? Okay, how do I feel now? Whereas with edibles or tinctures or other forms of consumption, it's going to take a lot longer to kind of get to that right level for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because you're waiting, like, the famous meme, like, these edibles aren't shit. Like, you're sitting around waiting, like, oh, okay, well, 10 milligrams is enough for me. This
Yeah.
is good for me. And it's like, you really don't know until down the line, where you're like my mom, who eats I'm sorry, mom, who eats a 5 milligram edible and freaks.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, it's a really good way to know your dosage, to microdose.
Hmm.
Microdosing is more than mushrooms, guys. Microdosing is
Yeah,
more than mushrooms. Anything can be microdosed. Uh,
totally.
so it's just, this is really awesome and important that we have these options, we have this availability, we have these kinds of products,
Hmm.
and that it's like women-owned businesses as
Yeah,
well, Black-owned businesses, like, just by POC anyway, just in general, um,
totally.
the lack of representation in the space. It's really important to.
Visibility is so important, and
Mhm.
it's something that like we struggle against. It's like we are putting ourselves out there as business owners, as women, and I'm a person of color, business owners, and it's like expressing to media outlets that like this is something that is important. We're the important people that need to be seen, like ethical businesses and women in POC run businesses. This is the story. Like this is what really should be shown. Like if you, I forget who said it, but it's like if you can't, I mean, I know Beyonce said it in one of her videos, but she quoted it from someone else. But like that you cannot be what you cannot see. And like, being able to be seen is an important thing, and figuring out how to do it with grace and with pride, but talking about yourself and your accomplishments and your businesses are something that I think has often been really criticized, especially by women and women of color. Like, you should just be humble and thankful and grateful. And I'm like, yes, and proud.
Yeah.
And confident and let's go, like get on the movement, guys.
We're CEOs, like, we're CEOs. And we're starting from, a disadvantage, so to speak, that a lot of what we have here in the Western world is based on allopathic medicine, on traditional, like,
Mhm.
MD kind of things, and that women of color that are specifically in plant medicine, we are getting to shine the light on the fact that Western culture does not define everything in the blanket of health. It does not
Yeah.
define health sciences. These
Mhm.
are things that have been used for hundreds, for centuries, for centuries. And the fact that we can now reclaim power of ourselves and our businesses, as well as now bring these plants and this plant medicine to the forefront and show people, like, hey, we're thriving, we're doing, and we're using cannabis. We're not all just like fisting Doritos, like just pounding them
So,
down. Like, we're not, like, we're working out. We're women on the go, pre-rolls. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like
Women on the go pre-rolls. Yes.
we just came up with the business idea.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. It's our next marketing campaign.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it so much.
It's so well said, though. You said that very beautifully.
Well, thank you. I've been looking at it more and more. I never even realized our own prejudices being in the Western world, how we view things like, oh, well, that doesn't have enough research. Did you read the research? And it's like there's literally been cultures that have done this for centuries before we came in with research.
Yeah.
And so there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely.
We assume that, okay.
Well, and a lot of this isn't allowed to be researched or was funded to be researched. And so, I mean, there's a lot of money in pharmaceuticals, and so that's why a lot of research is able to be put into pharmaceuticals. It's because that's where the money is. Mm-hmm. And so now I think that, thanks to legalization, you're beginning to see some areas open up for cannabis research, but that wasn't even really allowed until recently, very recently. And so, of course, there's not mounds and mounds and mounds of research. It's because there hasn't been allowed to be any. I think that there, over the next decades, are going to be a lot more. I think specifically in terms of female health, reproduction, and pregnancy, I think that there's going to be a lot of cannabis and maternity research that's going to be done because, to your point, like, I think when you're pregnant or trying to get pregnant, the most important thing is that you're healthy and relaxed. So how are you supporting your health and your relaxation? And I think there's a lot of fear around cannabis, just like there's fear when you're pregnant around caffeine or sushi or all of these things, right? Like, but if this is what's helping you feel better and relax, then that releases some powerful hormones within your body that really can balance it out. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and we'll see more, but it's just going to take time. It's all a process.
Oh yeah, definitely. The more that we all as a collective focus on self-empowerment, that's what's going to really propel this forward, because the more that we realize that we can take our health into our own hands, that will be the moment that it all becomes crystal clear. And it's the way, it's the original, bring it back, it's the original medicine.
Yes, it is. It totally is. It totally is.
And since we're almost at time, I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to talk about your flower bouquets.
Oh yeah, our bouquets. Yeah, so we are doing something fun. We just actually launched full flower hemp on our website last week. And so what we're doing is we paired two strains. One is Super Haze and one is Lifter. They're both from High Desert Nectar, which is the farm I mentioned earlier in Bend. And we've bundled them together with our different herbal blends. So we have a chill bouquet, which is with our airplane mode. We have a play bouquet, which is with our car sex blend. And then we have an inspire bouquet, which is with our muse blend. And so, yeah, you can get a full 7-gram jar of hemp, whole hemp flower, plus a jar of the herbal blends for a discounted price. So it's pretty fun. And what's fun too is actually we are sending with each of them a little love poem, which we wrote, and a little enamel sort of sexy pin. So you get some fun swag, which is fun too. We're exploring our swag merch side this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming and taking some time to speak to me and everybody about smokable herbs. I learned a lot. I really want to check out the car sex now, because it looks beautiful, but it's also like, that sounds like
yeah. Yeah, it's a fun one. Well, and it's good too. It has mullein in it, which is a great respiratory supporter as well. And so yeah, I mean that is a really, really great one. And so we'll make sure to get you some.
Oh, thank you.
It's good to see you again. Like I said, yeah, that was me, and it was been years ago, but I'm so glad that was your first introduction to smokable herbal blends outside of your friend, and that it's since stuck with you, it seems like.
Oh, definitely did. I've been watching you guys, so I really appreciate it. I appreciate everything, and everybody make sure you check it out. If you don't purchase these flower bouquets now, I don't think it's going to last past, I think it's to the 14th, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
make sure you, as soon as you jump off of here, jump on the website and get it.
Yeah. And we just launched a new splash page too. So, you know, you can check out both the THC and the CBD stuff. It sort of directs you to both pages, but it's barberry.world. So BARBARI.world.
All right, perfect. Thanks again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And
Thank you. You too.
I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye,
Alrighty.
everybody.
Bye. Take care.